There are a few things living rent-free in my mind right now, and honestly, they probably should be living in yours too. Because the older I get, the more I realize that the things changing our lives are really the big decisions. They are the thoughts we keep returning to, the sentence you repeat when nobody's watching, the habits you defend, the future you keep imagining but never building. And lately, I've been thinking about a few things that I cannot shake off. Some of them are uncomfortable. One of them completely changed the way I look at discipline, and the last one explains why many people spend years trying to change their lives without changing anything. So I'm going to share with you the 5 things that are living rent-free in my mind right now. And the first one is, your attention is probably the most important thing that you own, but you are giving it out for free. I want you to think about how ridiculous this is. You can spend years building a career, years building a business, years learning a skill, but then every single day you can hand over your attention to somebody else in just 3 seconds, just by opening your phone, scrolling, clicking on another video which is actually another person's opinion, and then we wonder why we cannot sit down even just for 1 hour and work on the things that will actually change our lives. I had days where I genuinely wanted to get something important done, but somehow I could spend at least an hour consuming information about productivity. I could watch someone explaining about how to focus, how to wake up early, how to become disciplined, and then I would realize that I'd spend the entire morning learning how to do something without actually doing it. And for me, that thought bothers me, because eventually you'll have to ask the question, how much of your life do you actually spend preparing to live instead of just living? And that's what I usually call the attention tax. You know, every single time you allow something meaningless to interrupt something meaningful, you have to pay for it. And the surprising thing is that you don't pay for it with your money, but with your future. And so for me, the system I'm trying to run right now is very simple. Before I consume anything, I first ask the question, what am I supposed to be building today? Because I realize that if I do not decide where my attention goes, then someone else will do that for me. Now, before we go into the second thing that lives rent-free in my mind, I want to tell you about a goal I have. I'm on a goal of reaching 100 subscribers, and I know you could truly help me by hitting the subscribe button. Okay, with that said, let's go to the second thing that lives rent-free in my mind, and that is, motivation has become a very sophisticated form of procrastination. I know this sounds backward because every single time you're told to be motivated, to find your why, to visualize your future, to get inspired. But now here's where the problem comes in. Sometimes motivation gives you the emotional satisfaction of acquiring the goal without even you doing anything. And that's why you see that you'll watch a powerful video, you'll feel different, you'll feel locked in. You already start imagining the person you're going to become. And for about 20 minutes, you feel like your life has already changed. But then tomorrow comes and nothing is done. You know, I think that every person who is serious about self-improvement have come to learn this one thing. And that is, you don't need to feel ready. You just need a rule that will survive the days when you don't feel ready. And that's the difference. Motivation asks, do I feel like doing this? But then discipline asks, what did I say I was going to do today? And these are two completely different questions. So for me lately, I've been trying to remove motivation from certain decisions. If I say I'm going to work, I work. If I say I'm going to write, I write. If I say I'm going for a run, I go. Because the goal is not to always feel motivated. The goal is to always become the person who does the action no matter how they feel. And this brings us to the third thing that lives rent-free in my mind. And this is what I've been calling the dopamine gap. And this actually explains a lot. You can spend the entire day giving your brain small rewards, like short videos, notifications, entertainments, and even some random conversation. And then at the end of the day, you expect yourself to sit down and do something difficult that is not going to give you rewards until months later. And at that point in time, the brain starts negotiating, starts telling you, let's do it tomorrow, let's just watch one more video, let's take a break, maybe you're tired. But the fact is, you're not necessarily tired. You're just overstimulated. And there's a massive difference. The difficult work isn't suddenly less valuable. It's just that your brain has been accustomed to getting rewarded without having to wait. And that's what I call the dopamine gap. It's the gap between what your brain wants right now and what your future requires. And I've realized that rebuilding the ability to tolerate that gap is one of the most important skills you could develop today. Because almost everything worth having has a delayed reward. Building a business, getting good at a skill, becoming financially free, building a reputation, or even creating something important. None of these things care about your attention span. They only reward you when you stay long enough to become good. So the system I'm thinking about now more is simple. Make boredom normal again. Sometimes take a walk without your phone. Work without having background stimulation. Sit with a difficult problem. Read something without checking your phone's notifications. Train your brain to stop demanding a reward every 30 seconds. Because if you can't tolerate boredom, then you're going to abandon everything that requires patience. Now, the fourth thing living rent-free in my brain is this. You can know exactly what is wrong with your life and do nothing about it. Now this one hits different because awareness usually feels like progress. Most times you identify the problem, you understand the psychology, you know the habit, you know what you're supposed to do, you can even explain the entire situation perfectly. But then somehow 3 months later, you're still doing the exact thing. And this is a dangerous place to live. Because sometimes knowledge also becomes a hiding place. You can spend years studying about discipline without being disciplined. You can consume hundreds of hours learning about financial discipline, but then still remaining financially irresponsible. You can read about focus while spending 5 hours a day distracted. You can understand your pattern so well that you become excellent at explaining why you exactly stuck. But then explaining is not transformation. And at some point, you need evidence. Not another realization, but evidence. Sometimes you need to look at your calendar and see that you actually worked. You need to look at your project to see that you actually built it. You need proof that the person you're saying you're becoming is actually showing up. And that's why I've been thinking about the replacement principle. You don't eliminate a bad pattern by simply hating it. You replace it. Don't just say, I'm going to stop scrolling. Replace scrolling with something else. Don't just say, I'm going to stop wasting my mornings. Replace the morning with a defined routine. Don't just say, I'm going to stop being inconsistent. Create a minimum action you could perform even at your worst day. Because every empty space gets filled. And if you don't deliberately replace the old behavior will come back. And this takes us to the fifth thing living rent-free in my mind right now. And this might be the biggest. And this is your future is built by what you repeatedly tolerate. It's not what you say you want, it's what you tolerate. You might say you want to be focused, but then you tolerate constantly checking your phone. You say you want to build something, but you tolerate consuming every single evening instead of creating. You say you want financial freedom, but you tolerate being careless with money. You say you want a different life, but then you tolerate having the same mind, the same environment, and the same everything. And then at some point, your tolerance just simply becomes your lifestyle. And I think that's one of the hardest truths about changing your life. You don't need more information. Sometimes you just need a lower tolerance for the things that are destroying your life. There was a period in my life whereby I thought I needed some massive breakthrough, some opportunity, some perfect plan, some moment where finally everything clicked. But then eventually I started realizing something. My life wasn't going to change because suddenly I discovered one perfect idea. It was going to change when I would suddenly stop negotiating with the things that I already know are holding me behind. And that one, my friend, is a completely different mindset. So, those are the things living rent-free in my mind right now. Your attention is expensive, motivation is unreliable, your brain can become addicted to immediate rewards. Awareness without action is just sophisticated procrastination, and your future is repeatedly shaped by what you tolerate. But then there's one thing that is tying all this together, and that is that your life is largely the result of what you repeatedly give your attention to, repeatedly practice, and repeatedly allow, which means you don't need to redesign your entire life in one night. All you need is to change what happens repeatedly. And so for me, here's what I'm doing. I'm picking one thing that I know is stealing my attention, one habit that I know is making me weaker, and one action that I know would move my life forward. And then I just change the system around these things. Not tomorrow, but today. Because at some point, you'll have to stop asking, how do I become the person I want to be? And start asking, what would that person no longer tolerate? And just that simple question will change everything for you. So, if you're trying to rebuild your life too, That's probably the conversation we should be having. Not how to feel motivated, not how to look productive, but to become the kind of person whose daily behaviors makes the future inevitable.